All right, on today's show we have Alisha. So this is I really enjoyed this episode because I learned a little bit out of this too. Because we dove quite deep on different aspects of trauma. So and different ways to I guess process it. We kind of went down different avenues with it, and spoke about different types of therapy models and that. And I think this is a really good episode for anyone that's going through it, or wants to take that next step kind of thing. So but yeah, make sure you do check out Alisha's Instagram pages and Facebook pages and YouTube pages. Let's just say social media pages, make it easier. So she does Walk with Trauma, so yeah, go check that out. She does post a lot of great things on there, so I suggest go check all the stuff out, reach out to her for any questions or anything like that. She's doing a bit of work behind the scenes, get this up and running, so do help me do me a favor and reach out to her and and check her stuff out. But also before I jump into today, if you want to help support the podcast that little extra bit, any little bit helps. You get a few extra things and all that kind of stuff. So just jump onto patreon.com/studio mindfulness. And also too, just a little quick, I am starting mindset coaching one-on-one. So if you are interested, send us a message. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I'll get you to explain your journey, what got you into, because we're going to be talking about trauma today, and because it's so many things you can dive down with it. So we'll start with your journey, what got you into it, what you studied and all that kind of stuff, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, hi, I'm Alisha, and I'm the founder of Walk with Trauma. Essentially a little bit of backstory for myself. I come from a family of heavy drug and alcohol abuse. I've experienced years and years of trauma, especially childhood trauma. And I have been going to therapy for the last 7 years, costly investment in myself. I wanted to kind of figure out what was going on with me and why I was so reactive in high school. And so when I finished high school, I went and did an advanced diploma of social science and social work. After that led me to go do a dual degree of criminology and psychology at university. I dropped out in the last year because I had a mental breakdown. I was working full-time and going to uni full-time, and I had to make a decision which one was going to allow me to pay my rent. Other reasons came up. I think I just didn't agree with how expensive going to uni was. But also it just went to show I wasn't doing my work, wasn't listening to my body. I bet you there was probably heaps of red flags that I didn't identify across the way, but it all led me to where I am today, which is 7 years in therapy, working on myself. I make a commitment to myself every day to be the best version, and to make sure that I leave a conversation or a group of people happier, and making sure that we're building a community.
That's awesome. So I want to touch base on therapy and what I guess what you learned through it, what your thoughts are, because I did the complete opposite road. I went down, say, the book route, YouTube route, doing my own research, my own work. And I've only just recently started to, go down that therapy route, looking at coaches and stuff.
Yeah.
So then they can see through my own biases, my own, things, and repaint, the story. Yeah. So back to the question, what did you get out of it? What, tools and benefits and that? Because I think there's a lot of benefit.
I have a very funny story. And it'll circle back around, but it's kind of, I don't know if you know too much about rehab and stuff like that, but statistically speaking, you have to go to rehab for an adult about 11 times before the rehab actually sticks. And that's like therapy. I've gone through quite a few therapists, and I think people need to know that you can outgrow your therapist, so you are going to go through your therapist. You're not going to ever just have that one therapist, and you need to make sure that when you go to see someone that you vibe with them. From the moment you walk into their room, if you have that energy where you can just exhale, that's the therapist you want to be in. And don't be scared to, not go back to that therapist. And if you didn't vibe and you didn't feel comfortable open up, that's totally okay. Sometimes we have the idea that you can't speak up, and that's the room where you speak up. You need to be your whole self in that room. But for me, I went through a lot of therapists. I think I went through 8 therapists before I'm with the therapist I am now, which I'm doing amazing work. But with me, because I studied the work, I self-sabotaged myself. So I knew the answers they wanted, and I told them, and I used my body language, and I softened my voice, and I would tell them the things they wanted. And I was tricking myself into thinking I was being successful in healing myself and actually doing the work when I wasn't really. And then after that, I had a break from therapy for about a year, kind of just figuring out myself and what I wanted to do. And then it got to a point about 8 months ago where I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm actually like ready to do the work. I can do the work at such a cognitive level. My mental capacity is so high, and I'm thankful because it got me through where I got today. But it hasn't, it didn't help me actually be true to myself. So my emotional part of self is like, no, you need to pay attention to this. If you want to live a fulfilling future and actually be healthy, this is something you need to focus on, and you can't suppress it any longer. And so I reached out to a somatic counselor. So she does somatic work, which is body work. And because I process things at a cognitive level, verbal therapy doesn't really work for me as such. So I'm more focused on somatic and art therapy. And so when I did my intake form with her, the first 2 lines is like, hi, my name, blah, 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 blah. And then I said, I just want to let you know that I self-sabotage. I'm going to tell you exactly what you want to hear, but don't take that. Don't listen to that and take it as gospel. I need you to call me out on my bullshit, okay? And so that's kind of what my whole intake form was about. And when I saw her, I literally was like, you can't, I went into the therapy room and I had drawn my whole family tree, the dynamics of my family. I said, I'm ready, let's do this. So I gave her all the information, and I was sitting there, I'm like, I'm ready to go, let's do this. And she's like, we're just going to slow down. she knew straight away. So therapy is such an individual experience, and you understand the difference between psychiatrist, psychologist, and counselor and stuff like that?
Yeah, briefly.
Yeah, so just to be careful with that and understanding what the right fit would be for you as well. So
I'll get you to explain that bit, because that'll help with other people that are listening in, and that, because when you go on the mental health plan that the doctors get to you, you normally get seen a counsellor, not a psychologist kind of thing.
Yeah, and I highly recommend to do your own research. You need to figure out what the best plan is for you, and not always listen to the doctors either, and trust that they're going to help you, but they don't know everything either, and they're probably not going to know your whole story. But essentially, a psychiatrist, they kind of establish what's going on, and they're going to have some communication probably from the doctor, and they're going to figure out what the best form of medication is. The psychiatrist can talk and kind of figure out other things, but they're typically the one to diagnose you with a mental illness or a disorder or something that you're struggling with. A psychologist and counselor are quite similar in the work that they do, which is obviously working for you guys and being a guide through your therapy. The best way I look at therapists that are a psychologist counselor is that a psychologist will focus on the immediate issue at hand, which could be the symptoms that you're getting from your trauma, which would be anxiety or depression or OCD and those type of things. A counselor, I feel like they're the type of people to dig really deep. They're the therapists you want to stay with for a while, because they're the ones that are going to try and do that deeper level body work with you. But again, I could be wrong. All information is subjective, so you need to do your own research.
Exactly right. And it depends on the counselor, psychologists and all that, what they're into, how much more work they get into. Because that's why I generally suggest people, you find someone that's passionate about it.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be doing their own research about it, and they're not going to just do off the book and that. Because I've had a bit of issue, say with therapy itself, I've seen a counselor before. I've walked into the room because of doing my own research and then all that. She kind of ended up telling me her problems instead of me talking to her about mine. So I was like, oh, what am I paying you for? Exactly. Kind of thing. And then, but my first one I seen, he was really good. And I kind of self-sabotaged that one because this is when I was still partying quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I pick, instead of healing myself, the party life, so I can continue keeping up with the rat race and all that kind of stuff.
What I like to say to people is, and this might hurt you, we think we can heal ourselves. We can heal ourselves to a certain degree, which is only a behavioral change.
Mm-hmm.
We can make a behavior change, and that's okay, and that's good, and it's still going to be helpful in the short term, but it's only going to be a cognitive behavioral therapy for ourselves that we can actually do.
Mm-hmm.
The deeper work that we need to do is more of an emotional. If you want real change, that needs to happen at an emotional level, and unfortunately we need to have another person that, A, to hold us accountable, B, to make sure it's a safe environment for us to let go, because sometimes you can say too much can come out, and then you can't control what's going to happen with all of those emotions. So you need to make sure that you have someone that is kind of essentially holding your hand through that process. But again, we can't do our own therapy. We can do therapeutic work that's going to help us become more aware of ourselves, and we can do breath work, and we can do body healing therapy and stuff like that. But real therapy, it needs to be with someone else. The power of community and connection with like another individual is insanely so good for us. And we forget to do that. We isolate ourselves and we put boundaries in between people. And although we need boundaries, sometimes it can be a bit too much.
I perfectly agree with you with that one too, because that's when, like, a lot of my realizations this year is that I need someone else to help me through it, because I can't do it all on my own. As you're saying, it's like you have your own, your own biases about things. You can't see things what other people can see. I've started to do like getting into like courses and stuff and working with other people. Then I'm like even going as far as extent like getting into hypnotherapy, about to do one of those sessions, because it's something that I think, this is just a personal thing with therapy and talk-based therapy. You're only training the conscious mind, you're not training the subconscious mind. And where the subconscious mind is like where all your habits are, and it runs 95%.
And it's cognitive, right?
Yeah.
Verbal is cognitive. So I would pose the question of, how do we heal our pre-verbal trauma? So from 6 years old and back, what do we do with that? And so this is why I really enjoy somatic and art therapy, because it allows you to communicate with your hands, because you have to use things, and you have to use your whole body to express things. So I don't know if you heard of sand tray therapy, but yeah, essentially a lot of therapists will have a huge sand tray in their rooms. They'll have this whole wall of, it can be toys, it can be, who knows, it's just anything, and they put it in the sand. And sometimes a therapist would be like, can you create what your perfect world would look like? And based on when, adults or kids grab it, they kind of create what their perfect world would look like, and then, talk about it. But being able to identify, kids won't know how to talk, or your pre-verbal stage of being a child and experiencing trauma won't know how to express what you went through. So there's so many different ways in doing it, but for sure.
I definitely agree, because movement, that's how, the body stores up trauma, and movement's one of the better ways to get rid of it. Because because there's this theory, thing I've heard. It's like when a dog runs into a door, for example, what's the first thing it does? It shakes. But as humans, and it shakes the trauma off, as humans, we get taught to, stay still, freeze up, bottle it down.
Well, how about this?
Yeah.
When we're kids and we fall over on our bikes, what do our parents tell us to do when we fall off our bike? Shake it off. Just shake it off. But when someone is experiencing trauma and other things, we can't see mental illness. And I think that's where we get lost a lot with this whole field of it, is that for some people, they really can't, they can see someone with a broken arm and go, oh, but when someone says, I'm struggling with OCD, I have really bad anxiety, or I'm struggling with depression, they can be sympathetic to a certain degree, but they can't be empathetic and have those emotions attached to it. So it's like, how can you see someone with a broken arm and feel that, and then see someone else that is struggling on the inside with a mental illness? So it's crazy.
I definitely agree. And it's like, it depends, because we choose to train, I guess, what we can see over what, other people can feel. So then we only train, say if someone breaks an arm, that we feel empathy over that, instead of, someone has like depression, anxiety and all that. And it's pretty hard to see too when someone does have a growth mindset. So for example, it's like they're always, doing new things and that. But normally that's another, escapism.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. I think I've talked about this with someone the other day about how everything can become an addiction if you're not aware of it. So even personal development can be an addiction. And it was for me for a period of time. Again, we self-sabotage as humans when we're not aware. And so my main focus of me being a being in this world is being so aware of who I am and how the room is when I walk in, and listening to myself and my emotions and the way that I treat others. And I think at the end of the day, when you're not self-aware, you can get so wrapped up in other things and self-sabotage yourself.
I've heard this because it's like the first thing that popped in my head when you said that too is like, I've heard Peter Crone say this, and it's so right. It's like the two people who've been through trauma and say one becomes addicted to drugs and the other one becomes addicted to the gym, at the core, they're the same. Yeah. It's just one's perceived as healthy and one's perceived as unhealthy, even though they're deep down both unhealthy.
Yeah, because they're both coping in their individual ways with exterior things. Again, the root of our problems with trauma is dealing with it in an exterior way. We project. Hopefully, if we go drink and I do drugs this weekend, I can numb the feeling of this trauma. If I go to the gym every single day this week and pump out, I'm going to be so caught up with my buddies that are working out, with myself that's working out, and all these other things that's happening. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, let's take that back. Everything that happens and all the trauma healing happens with self, with recognizing ourselves. Instead of going to the gym 5 times a week, I'm going to sit with myself an hour every day for this week and listen to my body and feel my body, and
exactly right, because it all comes back down to a numbing system kind of thing. But so just like, because I guess there's a lot of ways your body can respond to trauma, but would you say some of the main ways you see that people's bodies respond to trauma over time?
The biggest one, there's a lot, and it really would depend on like where people live and stuff. But the biggest one, stress eats away our brain matter. Over a period of time, once we hit probably our 50s and 60s, we're going to start becoming quite forgetful. We're not going to have any memory of our childhood or like family members and stuff like that, which is very scary. And in addition, with your trauma, your coping mechanism, which if someone was drinking alcohol and abusing drugs, that's only going to speed up the process of either dementia, Alzheimer's, cancer. Like, we open our body, our immune system is shot. Our stress is the #1 killer for our immune system. On top of that, drug and alcohol abuse. So we just allow our bodies, it's a freeway. We've opened up every single lane for things to happen to us. For myself, I have stage 4 endometriosis and I have an autoimmune disease, and that's because of the amount of stress my body went under when I was a child. And I was severely stressed all the way up, and I'm still stressed, but I manage it well. And I listen to my body and I know when to take a break and step away. But it probably wasn't until about 3 or 4 years ago that I got a control of it and started to manage it. But unfortunately, there was nothing I could do as a kid. But what I can do now is take responsibility and take charge of my health now.
Yeah, that's it. Because once you can accept it, that's when you can move forward. And, stress it's crazy how bad stress is for you. It's like, because they've been doing studies, right? So people in say the US, because this is Sean, I forget his last name, spoke about this. So in the US, people are exercising more than ever, eating right more than ever.
Yeah.
Or like quote unquote, as they do through this study. But all these diseases such as cancer, heart disease and all these, range of things are still skyrocketing. I mean, autoimmune diseases too.
Yeah.
And it's all because of stress, because we live in such a, I guess, stressful environment, such a disconnected environment too, because we become so individualistic, saying that wrong.
I totally agree. On that, I'll say 2 things. First one being us being aware of the content that we consume. I don't have a TV at my house. I don't watch any news. I don't participate in any of that. at all. I have all my notifications are turned off on my phone. So when I go on my phone to check social media, I, as Alisha Shaw, am actively going on this app to have a look at what's happening, not when a notification says, hey, pay attention to me, look at it now, when I want you to look at it right now. So I'm in control of that. Secondly, there's a study done with 2 rats. In one cage, they put heroin in the water. And there's nothing else. It's just a normal rat cage. There's a place for it to poop and drink water, and then the heroin water. Almost every time the rats would drink the heroin water, every single time. And then they did another scenario where they could put in the cage everything a rat could ever want: colorful balls, a wheel, heaps of food, all the stuff that they could imagine, the perfect ideal world. And they did the same thing. They put normal water and water with heroin in it, and none of the rats touched the heroin water. It's because of their environment. Our environment plays such a massive part on our mental health, and if we're not aware of it, then it's going to destroy us at the end of the day.
I perfectly agree, because we are social animals. We're going to do what, say, if we're in I guess if a lot of our mates are drinking and that, of course we're going to be drinking, because what's the saying? It's like you are the closest of your 5 closest mates kind of thing. So then, that's the kind of environment you're going to end up being in.
It's so hard too and I want to say this to everyone that's listening. You see me here today. I've said all the things I've experienced, a lot more than I've said on this podcast in terms of trauma, but you see me here today, and I would assume it would look successful to people, which it is successful to me. My level of success is happiness. How happy and free am I today? But it wasn't easy to get here. And my slogan, I guess you could say, it's not easy, but it's so fucking worth it. Okay. I have been going to therapy for 7 years. I've been doing the work for 7 years, and I relapsed in between all those years, and I've had hard times. I've gone to hospital. I've had mental breakdowns. I've fucked my relationships. I've hurt my friends. And we go through that. You go through what you grow through what you go through. And unfortunately, that's just the part of the plan. That's the part of who we are as humans and trying to heal, is that we're going to relapse. And I can't say from now and then in the future that I'm perfect. I'm probably going to relapse in the future. I'm probably going to hit a roadblock, and I'm going to hurt the people around me. But it's about trying to be better, be the best version of yourself every time you wake up in the morning. It's about trying to be aware of yourself. It's trying about doing good for yourself so you can be good for the world, because change doesn't happen out there. Change happens in us. And for us to change the world, we have to change ourselves first. Like, we can't, it's not an external thing anymore. It's all internal. It's all of us. At the end of the day, if you took our physical body away, what are we? What did we stand for? What did we achieve? And so it poses a question that our spiritual self and who we are and our integrity as a human is what is going to be worth it at the end of the day, not the amount of money and success and fancy cars and a house. And, at the end of the day, it's how did I treat the other human? How did I treat myself? Was I kind?
Exactly. All right. And it's like, because it's something that I've been asked by people too. It's like, oh, I've done the work, but this keeps coming up. And it's like, the work doesn't end. It's like new things are going to come up. You're going to have another layer coming through. And it's just like a never ending cycle. And it's like, Joe Rogan says this really well. It's like you choose you choose what's hard, choose your, thing that's hard, but everything's hard. Sitting on the couch is hard. Being in a comfortable position, doing the work to, better yourself is hard. Everything standing that, like, a lot of things in life aren't easy.
Yeah. And if it is easy, it's probably not right. It's probably not the right thing to do. If it's easy, something's wrong, because we are so complex. Our brains were built to be challenged. Humans, we were built to be challenged. This is why humans have done amazing things in the Olympics, and all these people that have broke crazy records. We're built to be challenged and to be better and to innovate and, do these things. And so, like, when you're aware of that, it's like we learn through the hard shit. And unfortunately, who knows why we're put on this planet? Who knows why we're meant to do what we're doing? But if you read history, we are very cognitive humans. We're so intelligent. We're so smart. So use that and know that if it's hard, you're learning something. And I really hate I don't know how to, I can't remember the saying, but it's like, oh, well, I guess it taught me a lesson, you know, after you reflect back on something, which is good that you're reflecting, but I hate that you had to wait till the shitty experience happened and then you had to reflect and then be like, oh, I guess it taught me a lesson. Why not, if you're experiencing something hard, remind yourself that this is hard and I don't know if I can get through it, but I'm going to try my absolute best because I know it's teach me a lesson, because I know that I'm going to grow through this and I know that it's going to give me the tools and resources to just be better in the future. So it's like, instead of something happening that's really difficult for you at the moment, just try and have that like thought process of, this is teaching me something. I don't know what it is right now, but I know it's going to be good for me.
Exactly right. And to get into like neuroscience and that, with the way your chemicals are designed through your brain, is that you get rewarded to do, to make the Olympics, train for the Olympics, for example, do that drawing, write that book. Your brain rewards you for that. You don't get rewarded for sitting on the couch all day.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I think I've actually, my 10-year goal is to do quite a lot of research in that field. Neuroscience is something that I'm really, really interested about, especially what happens to us when we're traumatized from such a young age. And we have neural pathways. That's how we communicate. Unfortunately, because of repetition and experiencing trauma at such a rapid rate, our brains built a neural pathway in the way that's going to respond to a situation. And so once you become aware of that, this is why I say behavioral change can only happen at a like 20% rate, because yes, habits are good, but if you're not aware of the emotional reason behind why your brain reacts that way, it's not going to change. So you need to know, okay, what emotion's coming up for me? Okay, that's the emotion. Okay, so what's happening every time I get triggered? What is my response? Identifying that response. What can I put in place that's a healthy coping mechanism that's going to change the neural pathway? So the next time it happens, it's a little bit easier. I'm not going to be as heightened and overwhelmed. So it's such an interesting field. And I know in probably 10 and 20 years, this field's going to be filled with awesome research, but it needs to hurry up.
Because it's only really starting to pick up, to be honest.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a priority, unfortunately, and that hurts to hear, but mental health hasn't been a priority until probably recently, the last 5 years. We're putting our foot down. We're like, no, like we need to be heard. The way that we're doing life and the way that we're living isn't working. It's not working for us.
No, because mental health is through the roof at the moment. And it's weird too that like with psychologists and all that, it's like they're the only people who actually, the only way they can diagnose you is from observing you. They don't get, a brain scan or anything like that. They, unless you go to a neuroscientist, and it's the only field, I guess, of doctorate or whatever you want to call it, that doesn't get that, those tools to do that, and which they desperately need to do that, because, how many times we are misdiagnosed with the wrong thing. Say, depression, instead you have PTSD, even though they do kind of go together.
But they correlate. Like that's why. So I was diagnosed with ADHD and bipolar. I don't fully agree with it, and so I've seen a couple of psychiatrists. So, and then comes back to the work that complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is what I suffer with, deeply correlates with mood swings, bipolar, ADHD, and all of these things. So I still haven't figured it out. It's been 7 years of therapy, and unfortunately you might never know, and that's okay. You need to become okay with that. But understanding that it could be trauma or it could not be. So either or, you need to be doing something for yourself that's going to help alleviate those feelings. But it's hard. How do you really know? Do you know what I mean? I personally think everything stems from trauma. It doesn't need to be you had a car crash and one thing traumatized you, or it could be you experienced severe childhood trauma. But I think everything is rooted in trauma. Like
I couldn't agree more with that. It's like we don't, because we always put trauma to to the extreme end of things, right?
Yeah.
As trauma can be something as basic as not getting picked up enough or getting picked up too much as a child.
Yeah.
And it's like we need to like open the range of the spectrum and say, okay, we're going through all these things. Yeah, they happen.
Yeah.
But
it could be a car crash, or you broke your arm, and so you're scared to play sport, or you feel like you can't extend your arm because and you have, our body holds so much memory. So it could be as simple as like crashing your bike or falling off something, to 20 years of, extensive trauma. Like, there's that range of anything that could happen, and it's all valid. And I think, like, unfortunately, like, thank God we've got to where we are today, because apparently PTSD was only for war veterans. But thank God we got to where we are today, because there's so much trauma, and there's generational trauma. I think, like, people forget that history, we killed each other for fun, and we had kings and queens sit on thrones and watch us kill each other like that was something, good job. That's trauma. Like, you're witnessing a human being, your blood and flesh, die in front of you. How can you not be trauma? That trauma is carried all the way through to who we are today, and the reason why we react to what we see on the news, and when we watch media and we watch movies, and we've become so, like, what's the word, normalized. We've normalized that feeling, and it's trauma. It's literally trauma.
Because I've actually started to do studies on this, and they reckon it goes back, 10 generations of, trauma. That's the furthest they can go with that. And it's also too with going back on the war veterans and like PTSD, because I did a study on this, and it's like a lot of the times of things that happen to you that are traumatic, but your body will find a situation that has nothing to do with what happened, but will respond in the same way.
Your body takes a toll.
Yeah.
Your body will always remember.
Yeah.
Like, what about this example of, like, when someone goes to hit you and you flinch? Why are you flinching? Unless you've experienced trauma, there would be no need to flinch. It's not because you're scared, it's because the body knows. It knows what's going to happen. Either you saw it, you've experienced it, so.
And these like things are, that get passed on generation of generation, have served in some point of time. And that's why you have like the, I guess, genetic memory of it, because it's helped to keep you safe. But now we're kind of getting into a world where we don't need these things anymore. But because of worlds evolving so quick, we're not evolving as quick as that, because we are an animal deep down.
Yeah, I think that's what I talk about. I don't know if you heard of Nathan Wallace. He's a Kiwi practitioner, lives in Auckland. Does awesome work in the brain. It's what I talked about on my YouTube video today that I released. And essentially he talks about what happens to our brain when we're anxious or overwhelmed or something's triggering us, what's going on. So essentially we have our mind 1, mind 2, mind 3, and mind 4. So our mind 1 being our survival brain. It's the first thing that's developed in our body when we're, being developed. Our second one is our movement brain. Our third one is our emotions and why we feel. And our fourth one is our cognitive brain. And so because this develops last, it's the first thing that gets, it's under pressure. It's pretty much under construction for most of our adolescents as well. So if you're wondering why your teenage kids aren't listening to you, they can't clean their room, they smell all the time, their brain can only process things at 11% rate during their adolescence because the amount of hormones that are being pushed through their body during their adolescence. So parents, be nice to your kids. I know it sounds like they're stupid. They're not listening to you. They don't want to clean. They don't want to do anything. Unfortunately, their cognitive part of the brain is under construction for 90% of its adolescence. But yeah, he talks about when we're feeling anxious, it's just like a set of scales. So your brain 1, which is your survival brains here, and your brain 4, which is cognitive, they're balancing each other out. And that's typically how your brain works. We're all meant to balance each other out with our chemicals and working out and eating right. So when we're traumatized, our neural pathway is going to respond to something, right? So if something, for me, it's a motorbike. So if I hear a motorbike, my anxiety kicks up, my cognitive is weighed all the way to the ground. I can't tap into my cognitive part of the brain. I can't remind myself that I'm safe. So I have to identify, okay, I have to use my eyes, move my body. Am I safe? Is this a safe environment for me to be in? Okay, breathe. Because what breathing is going to do is release oxygen into body. It's going to provide carbon dioxide to the blood cells, and it's going to communicate to the brain that you're calm and you're safe, and to bring your heart rate down. And that's when the cognitive part of my brain can tap back up and go, okay, what just happened? What just happened? Okay, let's talk about that. Do you know what I mean? And if you're not aware of yourself, you're not going to talk about that. You're going to totally ignore that red flag that came up for your body. But yeah, this guy's amazing. The work he does in the brain, it's insane.
That makes a lot of sense because my trigger with that is people that I find threatening.
Yeah.
Is that I freeze, my body
Yeah.
starts shaking, and it's like because I work as a barber, so this is like really challenging for me because
Yeah.
especially when they ask for like say lines or they want to cutthroat shakes, my body just starts going haywire, and I'm like I kind of need it. Like I'm starting to do it now. It's taking that step out, like hey, give us 2 seconds. I'll go grab a drink of water, taking those deep breaths in, just so then my body knows it's safe.
Have you watched my YouTube video?
I watched a little bit of it this morning.
That's okay. I'll give you the rundown.
Yeah, because it was the breathing thing. Yeah, I'll let you explain it on here though.
Yeah. It literally sounds cool. There's a million breathing techniques out there. What do you do? Why do I need to hear yours? Okay, I get it. But I'll back mine up by science, okay? Because obviously breathing's great, whatever.
Yeah, I'd love you to break it down in science too. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I do everything that I research and talk about is all science-based. And again, you need to remember all information subjective. So you could be listening and be like, yeah, shut the fuck up. Whatever. And that's fine. I don't care. We're all different. We learn differently. But essentially 4-7-8 breathing. So obviously I explained a little bit of what happens in our blood cells when we breathe. It's producing oxygen and it's producing carbon dioxide in our body, which then is going to communicate to our brain to calm down. There's another reason we want to do the 7-second hold of the breath is because it's going to release an endorphin in your body, or endorphins, I should say, to bring your heart rate down slower. Okay, so if you literally did breath work for 3 minutes, your heart rate is going to come all the way down as soon as you're triggered. And so you're going to breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and slowly breathe out. There's 2 reasons we want to do that as well. You're going to ground yourself. And while you're breathing, you want to look around the room and kind of identify what's still. Okay, I can see that. That's fine. That's normal. It's just going to give you time to have that anchored part of self in that. But the main one is knowing when you're stressed, it releases such a high dose of cortisol, which is what we call the stress hormone. And you can't control that. As soon as that's released in the body, you're automatically triggered. And so having something to alleviate that and release a high level of endorphins at the same time to counteract what trigger just happened is going to bring you down faster, because if you don't pay attention to what's happening to your body, you're just going to be instantaneously triggered all the time.
And it's such it is a very good breathing technique too, because you come across a lot of them and I think it is one of the ones I've started to do because I've heard of it before.
Well, it's the 7 seconds that is the biggest part of it. Because you can do box breathing, which is only 4 seconds, but it's about holding your breath for 7 seconds and slowly breathing out for 8. You can breathe out for 8 seconds, go, it's not going to work. The whole idea of the 7 seconds is you want to give your breath enough time to produce oxygen and release carbon dioxide into the cells, because that's what's communicating to your brain that you're safe. Not up here is not doing it. Your body is doing the work. So you need to give your body time to do the oxygen, because this is why light breath work doesn't work, because did I get oxygen in my body? No. And this is why we do a big out of nowhere, because our body's like, hey, I need oxygen, you're not breathing good enough. So it comes back to being aware of ourselves as well. Could you imagine if you did 4-7-8 breathing for the majority of your day, you'd be a pretty chill dude, wouldn't you? But yeah, really knowing that 7 seconds is so important. If we can't hold for 7 seconds and slowly breathe out for 8, it's anchoring us, but it's not really doing anything that we want to happen in the body. And our body is so important.
100% right, because and it's also too that because this is when I first come across breath work too, is was it Stephen Maxwell, I think his name is, because he's he does some type of fighting UFC or something like that, and he goes, a lot of us don't breathe properly because we all breathe into the top, to the fight or flight, top of the lungs.
You need to breathe in the bottom pan of your stomach.
And because the top is is your fight or flight responses, and then also too, that's why a lot of people have shoulder problems, because you're doing this all day, going up and down.
And we hold it. My tension, unfortunately, my tension's in my shoulders. It comes back to trauma as well, where we hold our trauma triggers. When you're anxious, what happens to your body?
Freezes up.
I told you what happens to the brain and the blood, but what happens to the physical part of our body? We tense. we're drawing blood from the different areas of our body because it's been our heart rates having to be put under pressure out of nowhere. So it's had to use all this blood. Where's that blood coming from? We don't just have a sack of blood hanging above us to give to our heart. So it's just putting so much pressure on our body when we're triggered.
That's it. And also it's shutting down our immune systems too, and everything that's going on inside that helps to keep stuff running.
Absolutely. So when people tell me, typically when people go on holidays from work, they get sick because they're not stressed and their body's like, okay, I can look after myself now. Yeah. Your body's been stressed. Normal people will have the 4-week holiday at the end of the year. So you're working for majority of the year under pressure. And so many people get sick around Christmas time is because everyone's just taken time off work and they can let go, can breathe, exhale a little bit. Unfortunately, your immune system's literally been at the lowest function for that whole period of the year. It's just been open to everything.
And there's so many opportunistic viruses that sit on you all the time. And then once you do get the chance to relax, your immune system, responds because it's the virus.
It happened to me a week and a half ago. And this is what I'm saying, I'm not perfect, I work on this every day. I hope to only get a little bit better, but 3 weeks ago, I quit my job. I wasn't living in line with my values. A big value for me is communication and support. That's what I expect to receive in the workplace, and I'll give it to you vice versa. There has to be a level of mutual respect in that. But I wasn't given that, and I wasn't given any support and communication, especially with having 2 family members recently pass in the last 8 weeks, 4 weeks in between each other. Didn't have any support. And it just got to a point where I was like, I don't want to be in a workplace, especially I was working for a wellness brand that didn't care about the wellness of their people in the brand. So I quit and I was like, I can't do this. This is not the best for my mental health. I'm going to take the next 3 months off. The day I handed my resignation in, I went to bed, I woke up on the Tuesday and I had strep throat, which is it's one of the worst bacterial throat infections you can have. And if untreated, you can die from it. But the doctor said that virus has been in you for a while. It's just waiting for the right time to make you sick. And so as soon as I exhaled and I was like, okay, I can breathe again. I'm just going to take the next couple of weeks off. And I was telling my body, and all these things were happening, and my body was like releasing and calming down, and I was breathing. I got sick. And it's because I was under so much stress.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. And that's how the body responds to things and that.
Yeah.
So I'll wrap it up on this question. What is the legacy you want to create?
The legacy I want to create. That's a good question. I think it would be more around, I'm here and I could be talking to someone that's experienced trauma here. And we look at this middle part like, what the fuck? How can I get to where she is? What do I have to achieve? Did you know that you needed to go to therapy to fix yourself? Because I didn't know that until 7 years ago. I thought I don't know, we just don't know. Do you know what I mean? So I hope the legacy I want to leave behind is my story and the raw, vulnerable parts. Not like, oh, I'm better now. I'm good to go. It's like, I want to go through the hard mental breakdowns, the times I went to hospital. I want to write a book. I want to leave my process of life behind. I want to let people know the significant trauma that I experienced, and let them know that you can be an anomaly. You don't need to be what your family has created your DNA to be, because that's what we are, right? When you're born into trauma, your DNA has literally kind of created your whole life for you. You're either going to be addicted to drugs and alcohol, you're going to be pregnant at a young age, you're going to go to prison, you're going to end up in the system. It pretty much determines it for you. You can be the anomaly, be aware of your surroundings, be aware of who you are, and know that you can change. But it's not going to be easy, but it's fucking worth it. That literally is so fucking worth it, because I enjoy waking up now, and I want people to experience that, because there was a point where I didn't want to be alive. I didn't want to live. What was the point to just be traumatized again, to experience these feelings that I was feeling? And you get caught in that, especially when you've had prolonged childhood trauma. Like, it's hard to get out of. So my legacy would be leaving my story behind and hoping to help others in the same position.
Resonate with that so much, and that's awesome. Yeah, I'm pretty similar with my one too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you.
That's all good.
Yeah. So what were you going to say? I'll let you
Oh no, it's all good. No, it's all good. I didn't know you were going to say something.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll link up all your socials and that to the
Awesome.
podcast and that. But yeah, thank you for coming on.
No, that's all good.
Cheers for tuning in today's podcast, guys. I just want to put a quick thing out there. I am currently doing a online one-on-one course for your mental well-being. So you can check that out at mitchellcrocker.com/courses and all the rest of the information there. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to me on any of my socials or email, which is on the website too. And also to tell me what you thought of the podcast, give us a like, so forth. And if you think this podcast will add some value to a friend, share it with them. But thank you for tuning in today, guys.